It is time to take a step back and to do a bit of compositing on our life bar. And one thing I want to do straight away is fix something. I forgot it. I wanted to set the group to overlay in here. And I'm going to boost the opacity of this layer within the group. And this one, I'm going to set it back to normal. And it's actually the group that is going to change the blending mode of everything that's within it. And it works a bit better now. Now it's time to do some compositing. So I'm going to add a filter layer. And I'm going to start with HSV HSL adjustment. It's a very basic tool to enhance slightly and tweak slightly the color of your life bar. And you can see that I'm boosting right now. It's really enhancing straight away the colors of the life bar. It's a bit more pink and it's a bit stronger as well. And it's starting to look polished, although it's been only a few dozens of minutes right now. The thing that's important is you are not forced to get the lighting and the colors right with game art or any art at all. You can refine it on the go. Don't try to get it right at the first trial. It takes a lot of experience. Even for me with UI, I can't do it. I have to do compositing every time. So I'm going to add another adjustment layer and try to go with the color adjustment curves. And you can use the lightness curve to boost the lightness contrast of your bar without affecting its colors. I want to add something above that. So one issue with compositing is that when you add those filter layers, they are non-destructive, but if you paint below them, you're going to paint on non-modified layers. You're going to paint something and it's going to be processed by the filter layers every time. So be sure that you have your base bar right before you start doing that. I'm going to put them in a group and I'm going to enable pass-through. This group, I call it comp. It's just to mean that my compositing stuff is in there. It's just for the sake of staying organized. And at the top, right in here, I'm going to add a complementary color to my bars. So maybe I'm going to shade it with some blue in here, not too saturated, not too strong. And I'm going to add, you can see, a layer of blue. So I could add it in normal mode, just like that, to have that blue to purple to red. And it's really giving my bar an even more polished look, as if it was lit by two different lights, a white one from the top and a blue one from the bottom. But I'm going to try and play a bit with the layer styles. You can use the arrow keys to navigate the styles. I do like that parallel effect. Divide is always pretty cool. When you get a complementary color to divide, you always get those very strong highlights. I'm going to go with that. And you can see in here, happy accidents. You can play a bit with the blending modes. You don't have to know everything you can do with them by heart. But I still want some blue at the bottom, so I'm gonna try with color dodge. It's too soft light. How about having some normal mode below that previous one? Yeah, it's all right. I'm going to add a transparency mask in here again. Okay, and erase part of it in the middle. So Krita is starting to slow down a bit as we are layering a ton of things in here, but it will do the trick for this one. So the bar looks satisfying enough right now. We are going to add a less detail using the layer styles in Krita. We are going to add a drop shadow, quite simply. I'm going to set the lighting angle to 90, so the light comes from the top. Don't ask me why it's orientated in that direction. I guess it's something they'll have to fix. And I'm going to set the blending mode to normal. The reason for that is that in your game, you are going to export the asset. And in your game, you cannot have that multiply information built into the PNG texture of your live bar. So you want it to be in normal mode and to look good in normal mode because that's how it's going to be rendered in the game. I'm going to lower the opacity of the effect, and I'm trying to keep a very subtle shadow. The instant preview is not working on the layer effects right now, so the rendering is really slow. So be sure not to add too many effects or you're going to have to wait a lot to see the result. Alright, so there are a few more things we can do with our bar to polish it. We can go at the top of it, and I'm selecting again a sharp brush in here, and I'm just going to add some details in there manually and some highlights to give it a more organic look. You can see that I'm breaking down my highlights, and I'm going to zoom in and make it a bit, thicker in some areas. I'm adding the highlights in various areas where I know the light is hitting the object. I'm trying to give it different shapes to try to define, I could define a jagged outline, for instance, a bit more like something like that, and add some shadows right in there in order to make it look more like a broken gemstone. But I'm just trying to see how I can enrich it. The bar got to a point where I'm satisfied with the result. The only thing I want to add is a little shadow inside of the outline on either side of it. So I'm going back to my inner outline layer, which is opaque, and selecting the opaque pixels. This is going to allow me to paint in there if I want to. But what I'm going to do is just add a new layer, invert the selection, add a transparency mask. All right. And I'm then going to paint manually the shadows in there. So you could do it in some ways. You could definitely use layer effects for that. And so I'm going to start to paint inside of this layer. Just lower the opacity of it to make it really subtle. So that's doing it all by hand. And you can notice that I'm using a brush that has a bit of grain in it again. I find it really nice. It's going to give us the kind of finish you don't want in any type of game, but as this is just a demonstration, it does the job fine. And it's going to give a really organic look to my shadows. And I want some shadows even at the top where the light is hitting. It's some kind of ambient occlusion, I'm just adding it subtly in here. I then want to invert my selection and to paint a bit. I like to do the same in here for the outline. I'm gonna use another brush that's a bit faster to paint with. This has to be really subtle, so it's not the easiest part to do, and especially not the fastest thing to do by hand. But it does the job. I'm pretty sure there are ways to automate the process a little bit. I'd have to do some research with the GMake filters. Sadly, they crash Krita right now in this version, on my computer at least, so you'll have to wait a bit to get that. And in here, I'm going to add a slightly bigger shadow created by the bar itself. And because I have all that hierarchy of layers, you can see that it's coloring the shadows as well in some areas, which is kind of interesting. I don't have absolutely full control of my shadows. I still like the kind of effect I'm getting. So it's looking a bit crappy right now, but I'm going to lower the opacity enough so that the effect becomes subtle. You can then see the difference if I group both layers. without and with the shadows. It's taking a little bit of time to update, but you can see that it's that subtle element that you add around the end. You can do multiple passes of it to make the bottom of the bar darker than the top and the sides, just like I've done, in order to make the lighting a bit more believable. And you kind of sculpt the light into your UI element. That's it for this demonstration. Although Krita is not necessarily the best tool for the job, you can see that it's efficient, and with the upcoming improvement to the vector workflow in 2016, I think it's going to become a better software for that. In the Game Art Quest training series I'm working on, you'll get much more in-depth content about just that. That said, I want to thank you all for watching. Be creative, have fun. Until next time.